Hello guys, welcome back to Anime Moments. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Against the Gods based on novel. So let's start explanation. Xiao Lai leaned on a corner of the dragon confining prison. His face was thin and his complexion was haggard. There was no anger, no resentment, no panic, nor struggle. In regards to someone's arrival, he did not have the slightest of reactions, as if he was already completely indifferent to his life and death. As a nobody from a small town being brought into Burning Heaven clan's dungeons, anyone would know how he would ultimately end up. Xiao Lai's aura was minutely weak and was accompanied by the marks of his slight internal injuries. However, there weren't any scars on his body, which allowed Yun Che to heave a large breath of relief. The disciple guarding the prison stepped forward, opened the heavy prison door, and then said stiffly, "Go in, remember to be quick." No need, Yun Che's eyes went cold. Before the 4 prison guarding disciples had time to react, Dragon Fault was already within his hands, and instantly swept once. Bang! The entire dragon confining prison surface slightly quaked as the 4 prison guarding disciples were instantly sent flying with a bang. To have been directly attacked by Dragon Fault, their outcome was undoubtedly going to be instant death. Before they died, their eyes had gone wide, reflecting that nightmarishly awful Dragon Fault. This sudden change immediately caused the 7th floor of the dragon confining prison to become chaotic. Everyone locked within the prison threw themselves forward, and it was unknown whether they were howling screams of excitement or fear. It was also at this time that the deathly still Xiao Lai lifted his head. Yun Che took a huge stride forward, grabbed onto Xiao Lai's arm with one hand as he emotionally yelled, "Grandfather, it's me, it's Jaya." As he said that, Yun Che gently wiped his face, and his face immediately appeared within Xiao Lai's line of sight. Xiao Lai's dim eyes suddenly burst with light. He grabbed onto Yun Che's arm as his entire body trembled with emotion. "Cheya, you. Yun Che said with a resolute expression, "Grandfather, it's been a while since we've seen each other. I have so many things I want to say to you, but now is not the right time. We have to leave this place first." "Don't worry, Grandfather, we will definitely escape. Little Aunt is already waiting for us in a safe place." Xiao Lai fixed his gaze at Yun Che, and had millions upon millions of emotions and words to say. As he looked at Yun Che's expression, he felt an aura that was as thick as a mountain, as boundless as the sea, that was strange yet incomparably familiar. He heavily nodded his head. Okay. What's happening?" Loud shouts sounded from up above, accompanied by the sound of approaching footsteps. Yun Che lifted Xiao Lai, tightly held his body and said softly, "Grandfather, we're going to leave right now." "Huh?" Yun Che fiercely sucked in a deep breath and yelled lowly. Followed by the loud and clear sound of a dragon's cry, Dragon Fault smashed upwards. Boom! 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 An enormous sound, as though the heavens and earth had all collapsed, resounded through the entire Burning Heaven clan, making the originally quiet Burning Heaven clan fill with alarmed cries as yells sprang up from every corner of the night. In just one strike from Yun Che, the entire 7th-floor dragon confining prison had directly been penetrated through. Yun Che suddenly leapt while carrying Xiao Lai, instantly rising over a height of 66 meters, returning back to Burning Heaven clan's ground level. The suddenly exploded open ground naturally attracted every gaze in the surroundings, but when the nearby Burning Heaven disciples clearly saw who had landed, their faces instantly changed into endless terror. Yun Che. The profound seal on the back of Yun Che's hand emitted rays of light, and the snow phoenix beast appeared beside him amidst its long cry. He quickly pushed Xiao Lai onto the snow phoenix's back and said calmly, "Grandfather, let Little Chan bring you away first. It will bring you to the place where Little Aunt is. I'm going to stay to settle personal grievances. Rest assured, in at most 4 hours, I'll return and meet up with you too. Little Chan, leave quickly. Cheya, you." Before Xiao Lai's anxious words had completely left his mouth, the snow phoenix had swiftly gone with the wind in the midst of a long bird cry. Like a snow-white shooting star beneath the dark night, it disappeared from his line of sight in the blink of an eye. Yun Che had not heard Xiao Lai's later words, but he knew what Xiao Lai had wanted to say. As he watched the snow phoenix fly into the distance, Yun Che smiled cheerfully. Once he turned his face around, his face instantly became cold. With the snow phoenix's speed, even Burning Heaven clan's Grand Clan Master might not be able to catch up to them. But currently, the snow phoenix was supported by medicinal power, and it was fundamentally unable to maintain its extremely quick flight speed. Adding on to the fact that Xiao Ling's currently location was not too far from Burning Heaven clan, he absolutely could not travel together with Xiao Lai. If he did, there was a large chance that they would be overtaken, and the hiding place would be discovered. Besides, Burning Heaven clan's objective was never actually Xiao Lai, and was instead him. Since he had appeared, there would obviously be no one who would care about Xiao Lai. Once Xiao Lai had left, he was basically completely safe. After safely rescuing both Xiao Lingxi and Xiao Lai out of Burning Heaven clan, Yunche was finally at ease. But to him, the situation at hand had obviously not ended yet. Because now was the time that he would formally demand payment from Burning Heaven clan. Dragon Fault loudly smashed onto the ground with a bang, and more than 10 lines of cracks quickly spread outwards from under his feet. They expanded all the way to the feet of the Burning Heaven disciples, making them hurriedly retreat in fear. Seeing those Burning Heaven disciples' sorry figures, he laughed wildly and said, "That's right. Your granddaddy Yun's here again. Obediently wait for me here. I, Yunche, solemnly swear that within 1 month I'll strike your Burning Heaven clan off of the profound sky continent, forever." Yunche's voice was extremely splitting, and his clear voice spread throughout the entire Burning Heaven clan encampment. Amidst his wild laughter, Yunche withdrew Dragon Fault, turned around, and quickly fled towards the south, his figure rapidly disappearing into the curtains of the night. Not long after, like a sudden clap of thunder, a bellow could be heard from the sky, "Devil's Pawn. Tonight, this old man shall make you disappear forever. Where do you think you're going?" This voice was even more splitting than Yunche's. At the same time, it was mixed with deep fury. It was evident that it had been thoroughly infuriated by Yunche's words. Before the voice had even landed, 2 black figures came from the sky, immediately chasing in the direction Yunche had fled in with a monstrous speed. Among these 2 black figures, one was Burning Heaven clan's Grand Clan Master Fen Yijue, the other was Grand Elder Fen Zia. Very quickly, Fen Duanhuan and a group of elders rushed to the scene. Seeing the mess above the dragon confining prison, they all flatly breathed in a cold breath of air. "Clan Master, should we go support Grand Clan Master?" Fen Moji asked. "No need." Fen Duanhuan raised his hand. "With my father and Grand Elder's strength, they simply do not need our help. HMPH, he had just suffered serious injuries yesterday and wasted a large amount of his strength. I didn't expect that he would dare break in again. This time, with the combined forces of father and Grand Elder, it's impossible for him to escape even if you gave him wings. In the end, he is just too young. Just to save a useless relative, he'd actually throw his life away regardless of his injuries. With Grand Clan Master and Grand Elder going out together, it's absolutely foolproof. I believe that within half a quarter of an hour, they would get him. This time, we must make Yunche pay the greatest, most miserable of prices." Another elder said as he gnashed his teeth, as if Yunche was already in their hands. Not long after Yunche had dashed out of Burning Heaven clan, 2 streaks of incomparably strong aura directly chased after him. He stared blankly for a moment, and then sneered. He never expected that it would actually be Burning Heaven clan's old farts who refused to die that were chasing after him together. It was simply too wonderful. He usually carried Dragon Fault on his back when moving, and used Dragon Fault to fight. This was usually one way in which Yunche trained himself. With Dragon Fault in hand, Yunche possessed an extremely destructive power, but when in movement, it was exceedingly cumbersome. In regards to displacement, evasion, and surprise attacks, he usually depended on Star God's Broken Shadow. And once he had put away Dragon Fault, it was as if Yunche had discarded a huge mountain that was on his back. His speed quickened, becoming as fast as lightning, instantly making the 2 great Emperor Profound experts behind him incapable of catching up to him. 3 streaks of human silhouettes, 1 up front and 2 behind, traveled throughout the dark night. The 2 streaks of aura above him firmly locked onto Yunche. As they continued their pursuit, the 2 grew increasingly surprised. They had clearly seen that Yunche had been wounded yesterday. The time between getting the injury and now was only 1.5 days. He had actually recovered to such an extent that he was able to make them continue chasing him for this long. Unwittingly, 30 or 40 kilometers swept past under their feet. The distance between the 2 great Emperor Profounds and Yunche was still not 1 meter away from the initial 100 meters. And at this time, the Yunche who was in front of them had finally arrived at an eerie deep forest. "Devil's Pawn. Because of what you did to our Burning Heaven clan, tonight, I'll definitely dismember your body into 10,000 pieces. Even if you run to the very ends of the earth, don't even think about escaping out of this old man's hands." Fen Ijue furiously roared as the distance between him and Yunche grew ever increasingly closer. With just you? You're not even worthy. Yunche suddenly turned around in the middle of his wild dash. With dragon fault in hand, the sound of a howl was accompanied by the silhouette of a wolf came from behind him. A sky wolf smashed onto the two people in the air. Oh! The silhouette of a wolf soared into the sky, and the extremely tyrannical power greatly changed both of their expressions at the same time. Not daring to receive the attack together, they had instead simultaneously flashed in the sky, rapidly splitting into two different directions to avoid it. The sky wolf silhouette nearly brushed past, instantly causing all the hairs on their body to stand erect. This kind of frightening sensation made them clearly realize that if they were directly hit by that wolf silhouette, even if it was them, they would still suffer serious injuries. The panic dodge they executed with all their strength allowed a split second of interruption to appear in their firm locking of Yunche's aura. Seizing this opportunity, Yunche rushed into the jungle up ahead with the fast speed possible, directly towards the south. HMPH. You still have the delusion of escaping from within our grasp. The two people simultaneously locked onto Yunche's aura, and immediately began chasing again. With a speed even swifter than a fierce gale, the two people's figures rapidly, and completely, disappeared into the darkness. And it was at this time that Yunche's figure casually came out from the most outer edge of the forest. He sneered behind a thin layer of the frozen cloud wall that had enveloped him as he looked towards the direction in which the two great Emperor Profounds had left for. That's right, what Fen Ijue and Fen Xia chased after was merely his profound handle. With frozen cloud wall still activated, Yunche turned around in Burning Heaven Clan's direction. As the distance between the three grew increasingly further, Yunche's speed became faster and faster. Once there was a safe enough distance between them, he cancelled frozen cloud wall and dashed straight for Burning Heaven Clan at full speed. Not long after, fields and fields of fire soared from a remote distance. Inside the dark forest, Fen Ijue and Fen Xia, who had lost Yunche's aura, used a special method to force the concealed Yunche out. They began to set fire to the forest. Never would they have believed that Yunche would escape out of their aura lock, nor would they believe that Yunche, whose aura had just disappeared, had actually been more than 500 kilometers away from them since a long time ago. Once the Grand Clan Master and Grand Elder personally took charge, everyone in Burning Heaven Clan thought that Yunche's death was inevitable. What they saw were not the Grand Clan Master and Grand Elder's capture of Yunche, but instead only Yunche. Yunche. But once Yunche's sword shook the ground and appeared within Burning Heaven Clan, it was as though everyone had seen an evil spirit from hell which frightened them to the point where their souls had flown away. Fen Moji yelled, "Where's Grand Clan Master and Grand Elder? Why is it only you? Oh, you're talking about those two morons." Yunche taunted while sneering, "I don't know which forest they are playing with fire in. They like to play with fire, but I like to kill dogs." Yunche's expression and voice immediately became incomparably dark. Accompanied by the wild dragon cry, Dragon Fault was suddenly swung out. "Stop him!" Fen Duanhuan roared. Fen Duanhuan had already experienced Yunche's terror yesterday, and he only felt a deep fear and dread towards Yunche. Seeing that Yunche had actually escaped Fen Ijue and Fen Xia, and charged straight back to Burning Heaven Clan, his heart suddenly dropped to the floor. He could only pray that the injuries Yunche had gotten yesterday had not recovered much. But what made him lose hope was that under Yunche's smash, that terrifying storm which came from the heavy sword directly flew towards five elders. Its might was no less powerful than yesterday's, and he showed not the least bit of an injured or weak state. "Father, where are you? Yunche has already invaded the clan once again." Fen Duanhuan held the sound transmission jade and used the loudest shout he could muster while retreating backwards. Just as he finished shouting, before he had even received Fen Ijue's response, an aura of death suddenly loomed towards him. He lifted his head and astonishingly saw that the distance between him and Yunche's heavy sword was no less than 15 meters. "Do not harm our clan master." The sounds of roaring echoed like thunderclaps as more than a dozen thick fiery dragons attacked Yunche from different directions, and exploded the instant they touched his body. However, these powerful profound flames that came from Sky Profound experts had only stalled Yunche for an instant, not harming him at all. Yunche cut open the flames, and without even looking ahead, swung an overlord's fury that was accompanied by a soul-shaking dragon cry. Boom! Under the Force and Profound weapons' absolute suppression, the 4 Earth Profound level Burning Heaven blades were all destroyed into 4 pieces. For Burning Heaven elders had also all flew backwards while vomiting blood, landing more than 30 meters away, incapable of getting up for a long time. Heaven-scorching burning fire. A long blade enveloped by a wildly ignited purple flame suddenly slashed forward from Yunche's rear. Yunche didn't move his body, as if he had not detected the attack. Just as it was barely half a foot away from his head, as quick as lightning, he suddenly extended his hand, grabbing onto the burning heaven blade's body. A extremely ear-piercing crunching sound echoed, together with the direct collapse of the purple flames on the burning heaven blade's body. The mouth of that elder who had launched a sneak attack on Yunche gaped open, as both his eyeballs almost popped out of his sockets. With a flip of Yunche's palm, the half of the blade in Yunche's hands flew outwards, piercing through the body of that burning heaven elder, firmly nailing him to the ground. 19th brother. Yunche, I'm going to kill you. As he watched the elder get impaled by his own burning heaven blade, Fenmoji's eyes became bloodshot. His previous fear had all completely become insanity as he discarded his burning heaven blade, charging towards Yunche with only an enormous blood-red claw that aimed for Yunche's chest. HMPH, overestimating yourself. As soon as the blood claw struck onto Dragonfolt's tip, in that instant, the blood claw, which contained a sky-profound might, shattered. Dragonfolt lightly swung, meeting the suicidal Fenmoji. Hurry up and dodge second elder. Fully aware of the terror behind Yunche's heavy sword, the elders and pavilion masters all roared in alarm. Bang! Dragonfolt heavily smashed onto Fenmoji's chest, and the fracturing of more than a dozen breastbones distinctively resounded through everyone's ears. Fenmoji flew outwards like a kite with a broken string, spraying out a bloody mist that filled the sky. He fell on the ground with his already shattered internal organs, and no longer made a sound. Following the death of Great Elder Fenmoli, Second Elder Fenmoji had also died a tragic death under Yunche's sword. Second Elder. Every Burning Heaven clan member trembled in fear. They never thought that the prey they lured in due to their scheming, which did not hesitate to be despicable, was actually a devil that currently pressed them towards an abyss of despair. When he came back to Burning Heaven clan, in not even 30 breaths of time, 3 more elders and 1 more pavilion master had died by his hand. Furthermore, 8 had suffered various degrees of injury. As for those Burning Heaven disciples beneath the rank of elders, more than a large amount of them had died. This was because they simply were unable to receive the after effects of Yunche's heavy sword. They could only die, and none were without injuries. Fen Duanhuan roared with indignation, Yunche, you've gone too far. It's you guys who have gone too far first. Yunche roared back, you Burning Heaven clan have always time and time again tried to kill me, and I still had given you some leeway. But not only had you not shown restraint, you actually dared to touch my close relatives, and now you say that I've gone too far? Bullshit. Yunche pointed his sword at Fen Duanhuan and growled, in my eyes, not one person in your entire clan is as important as the hair on my relative's head. To actually dare to touch my grandfather and little aunt, I will definitely exterminate your entire Burning Heaven clan. Fen Duanhuan's face distorted. When he thought about the cause of everything, he really wished he could personally cripple Fen Juechen. He said furiously, dream on. How could our Burning Heaven clan with a millennium's worth of heritage possibly be exterminated just based on your delusions? Every elder and pavilion master, use all your strength to stop him. Grand Clan Master and Grand Elder are currently coming back to the sect at full speed, and will return shortly. Burning Heaven fire rose, as a field of brilliant purple-red filled the night sky. Every elder and pavilion master's profound fire came together and completely swallowed up Yunche. Yunche sneered, and shouted, don't you Burning Heaven clan enjoy playing with fire? Then I'll let you Burning Heaven members, fully enjoy this round of fire playing. Star. Scorching. Demon. Lotus. Yunche leapt up high, and the biggest phoenix fire lotus he had ever released up to this point instantly blossomed in midair. The scarlet-colored flame continuously blossomed, spreading out for more than 300 meters. The thoroughly red blaze completely covered everything within the 300-meter area. Run quickly. The flame lotus in the sky emitted a terrifying high temperature, greatly changing the complexions of all those who had been playing with fire since birth. Those elders and pavilion masters who were quicker to react didn't even bother to think as they constructed the most powerful of profound defense barriers around their entire body and desperately tried to flee outside the 300-meter region. Star-scorching demon lotus blossomed to its largest, and if one were to see it from a far distance, they would see a completely red, indescribably enchanting fire lotus blooming in midair. As soon as this fire lotus fell, a sea of fire instantly formed, wildly engulfing and burning everything in sight. The broiling temperature had almost instantly extended over the entire Burning Heaven clan, making the entire Burning Heaven clan feel as if they were currently being roasted alive by hellfire. Under the Phoenix fire, those Burning Heaven clan disciples who did not escape in time were instantly burnt into charcoal, and did not even have the chance to cry wretchedly. Fen Ijue and Fen Zia, who were still 15 kilometers away, clearly saw the sky above Burning Heaven clan become a field of red. Both howled simultaneously, their speed increased to their maximum limit as they crazily dashed over. Yunche never planned to stay at Burning Heaven clan for long. It was not because he feared Fen Ijue and Fen Zia, instead, it was because his grandfather and little aunt still hung in his heart. If he were to encounter Fen Ijue and Fen Zia at the same time, escaping would definitely not be that simple. Yunche flew out of the center of the flame lotus, searched through Fen Zizai's memories, and directly charged towards Fen Jueching's dwelling. Bang! City-destroying pavilion's wall was smashed open in one strike. In just one glance, Yunche saw Fen Jueching's completely colorless face. Fen Jueching spent the entire day quaking in fear, because he clearly knew that the first person Yunche wanted to kill was him. All the resentments between Yunche and Burning Heaven clan had ultimately been birthed because of him, and even Fen Ijue was also furious with him. At this very moment, he himself was already thoroughly regretting so much that his intestines had almost snapped. Now that he saw Yunche's face suddenly appear before his eyes, it was as if he had suddenly fallen into a nightmare. Yunche, you. Just as Fen Jueching spat those 3 words out, he had already been grabbed by the collar by Yunche, like a raised chicken about to be slaughtered. Dragon Fault disappeared within Yunche's hands. Yunche's body flickered, heading straight towards the north, and quickly disappeared into the night. Behind him came the panicked shouts of, "Young Master!" By the time Fen Ijue and Fen Zia had returned to Burning Heaven clan, it was already messed up beyond recognition as Phoenix fire still raged in combustion. This was ablaze with the Phoenix attribute. Even if it were the Burning Heaven elders who possessed strong fire attribute profound arts, it was still extremely difficult for them to suppress the Phoenix fire to the point where it could be extinguished. Yunche had long since disappeared without a trace, and had even brought young Master Fen Jueching along with him. Fen Ijue trembled all over and he almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. His fiendish roar reverberated throughout the entire Burning Heaven Valley. Yunche. As long as I, Fen Ijue, am still alive, I swear that I'll turn your bones into dust. Yunche continued going northwards, and then gradually arrived at the place where he had hidden with Xiao Lingxi. The Snow Phoenix was currently loyally guarding the cavern's entrance. Seeing that he had returned, it let out a long happy cry. Rushing into the cave, he saw the protected Xiao lie by Xiao Lingxi's side. And it was also at this moment that Xiao Lingxi, who was in a deep sleep, happened to open her eyes. Night had passed, and dawn's light quietly shined. Blue Fire City's streets were completely silent. Aside from the city guard's night vigil, there were barely any figures moving about. Right at this moment, a fierce zephyr bird was currently flying over Blue Fire City. On top of the fierce zephyr bird was an anxious-looking youth who appeared to be around 17 or 18. Blue Fire City's peacefulness surprised this young man. He stopped in midair, pondered for a long while, and then suddenly slapped his own head while soliloquizing, "Oh right! I just remembered that I have his sound transmission imprint." The young man promptly took out his sound transmission jade and a sound transmission talisman. After thinking for a while, he said carefully, "Boss, it's Little Jie. I just arrived at the Blue Fire region. I basically know what happened between you and Burning Heaven clan these past 2 days. Is there anything I can help you with?" The sound transmission talisman slowly disappeared, and after a little while, receiving formation appeared. Yunche's voice was transmitted over, "Where are you?" Ling Jie was pleasantly surprised after receiving a reply, and hurriedly sound transmitted, "I'm right above Blue Fire City." "Where are you? May I go find you?" Yunche's voice quickly transmitted, "Approximately 10 kilometers south of Blue Fire City. Once you get in range, I'll go find you. I do indeed have something that I need your help in. I'll be right there." Ling Jie put away his sound transmission jade and quickly urged the fierce zephyr bird to swiftly fly towards the south. After safely rescuing Xiao Lai and Xiao Lingxi, even though Yunche really wanted to give Burning Heaven clan the most horrifying vengeance, he couldn't leave his grandfather and little aunt, whom he had just reunited with, alone. They had not left the Blue Fire region yet. If he were to go battle with Burning Heaven clan just like this, it would possibly bring danger to them. What he needed to do the most right now was to deliver them to the safest place possible. Before the sky brightened, Yunche had already walked out of the Burning Heaven Valley with Xiao Lai and Xiao Lingxi, and gradually neared Blue Fire City. It was at this time that he unexpectedly received the sound transmission from Ling Jie. Very soon, the cries of the fierce zephyr bird came from the northern skies, and the aura Ling Jie deliberately released also entered Yun Che's sharp senses. Yun Che, who was accompanying Xiao Lingxi whilst bathing in the morning wind, stood up, and scarlet-colored phoenix flames ignited from his hand. The fierce zephyr bird instantly swiftly swooped down, and without even coming close yet, Ling Jie had already impatiently jumped down. Staggeringly dashing to Yun Che's front, he said anxiously, "Boss, are you okay?" "Eh?" Looking at the Xiao Lingxi beside Yun Che, as well as Xiao Lai who was not too far away, he stared blankly for a bit, then said with surprise and joy, "These two are your family members who got abducted by Burning Heaven clan. You rescued them both. That's great. As expected of boss, to actually accomplish it so fast." Yun Che nodded with a smile. He could tell that the urgency and worry on Ling Jie's face had all come from his heart, and were not falsified in the least. His heart was also full of warmth. "This is my grandfather, this is my little aunt. He is my little bro, Heavenly Sword Villa's second young Villa master, Ling Jie." Ling Jie hastily stepped forward and said, "Hi Grandpa Xiao, Hi little aunt. This junior is Ling Jie, feel free to just call me Little Jie." Seeing that Xiao Ling's age was about the same as his own, the little aunt uttered from Ling Jie was extremely awkward and bashful. And his identity as Heavenly Sword Villa's young Villa master, on the other hand, had unquestionably astounded Xiao Lai and Xiao Lingxi greatly. Xiao Lai let out a gentle laugh as astonishment and praise revealed in his eyes. Xiao Lingxi responded back somewhat prudishly. "Young Villa. Master Ling. Save me, save me." Just as Ling Jie was about to speak, a dry and hoarse voice suddenly came. Only after tracing the voice did Ling Jie notice that there was a person lying within the withered bushes on his right-hand side. His gaze was lax, his face had no hint of color, his clothing and hair extremely messy, his limbs slightly trembling. And there was already no presence of profound energy at all on his body, clearly indicating that his profound veins were destroyed. Fen Juechen. When he saw this person's face clearly, Ling Jie cried out in shock. He glanced at Yun Che, as his heart was filled with astonishment. On his own, not only did he rescue two family members from Burning Heaven clan's hands, he also counter-abducted Fen Juechen. Even if one were to look through the entire blue wind, just how few could achieve this? "Save me! Save me!" Seeing that Ling Jie recognized him, hints of hope flashed through Fen Juechen's eyes. He begged, "Our four major sects are of the same breath and branches. My Burning Heaven clan and Heavenly Sword Villa had always been intimate. Please, you have to, save me, save me." Fen Juechen was scared of death, extremely scared of death. He was born with a golden key in his mouth, had the identity and family background far superior to the prince, had grown up in glory, and was sought after by everyone for his entire life. He had never thought that such a miserable day would come to him. Ling Jie pressed the tip of his nose, and said with an apologetic expression, "Yun Che is my boss, but you and me don't seem to be very familiar. For me to save you from boss's hands, no matter how you think about it, it doesn't seem to be very appropriate." The hope that was just born within Fen Juechen instantly turned back into despair. "Little Jie, why would you come here?" Yun Che asked. Ling Jie turned his face around, and answered seriously, "Actually, I've already received information 4 days ago saying that Burning Heaven clan's people went to Floating Cloud City and was currently bringing 2 people back to the sect. And there was a high possibility that those 2 were your family members." Yun Che's brows suddenly twitched. As expected of Heavenly Sword Villa, Burning Heaven clan must have done this in extreme secrecy, yet Heavenly Sword Villa had still quickly obtained this information. "That time, I was both anxious and angry, so I persuaded father to act." Ling Jie's expression suddenly became slightly awkward for a little bit, but father is that kind of person who doesn't like to be nosy. "So I personally left Heavenly Sword Villa, preparing to come here and persuade Burning Heaven clan to release your family. With my identity, as well as bringing out my father's name, Burning Heaven clan should give me this face. Otherwise, if worst comes to worst and they don't release the hostages, I'll threaten to spread the information of their despicable and ugly actions. I actually wanted to sound transmit this matter to you, but I was afraid that you'll be too impulsive with your personality, and may also affect whatever you were doing at that time. So I didn't tell you, and planned to tell you after rescuing them. But I didn't expect that on the way here, I would hear from the villa's people saying that you've already arrived at Burning Heaven clan, and fought a massive battle within Burning Heaven clan. Not only the Heaven Fire Star burning formation that even the villa had records of, you've even forced out Grand Clan Master Fen Ijua and Grand Elder Fen Zia who had become hermits long ago. Yunche. Things that happened in Burning Heaven Clan, Heavenly Sword Villa basically knew them as clear as day. Clearly, there were Heavenly Sword Villa's eyes within Burning Heaven Clan. Little Jie, thank you. Yunche said sincerely. This person who shouted to become his underling under naive, impulsive and hot-bloodedness unique to that of a youth, even though he was already mature, he still rushed thousands of kilometers for him in this sort of moment. This friendship was one that would be difficult for him to forget. No need, no need, Ling Jie hastily waved his hands, it is only natural for me to do things for boss anyway. Moreover, I couldn't do much for you. As he said to her, Ling Jie's eyes started to shine, and said with extreme excitement, Boss! I simply can't believe how amazing you've gotten now. To actually flip Burning Heaven Clan upside down by yourself, and even forced out the Grand Clan Master. And now, you had even captured Fen Juechen. Boss, every one of these things you've done could shock the world. If the word of this spreads, perhaps there won't even be anyone who'd believe it. They brought this upon themselves. Very soon, everyone under the heavens would know that not only am I going to destroy the sect Burning Heaven Clan, I'm also going to destroy all of Burning Heaven Clan's prestige and dignity. As he spoke these words, Yunche's tone was very calm. The inside of Ling Jie's heart uncontrollably shivered once when he looked at him. These words made him clearly comprehend just how much of an unprovocable landmine Yunche's family was. Thinking back to during the time at the Sword Management Terrace, Yunche had unhesitatingly used his life to rescue Xie Yuanba. Toward people intimate with him, he could be so recklessly selfless, but toward enemies, he was as cruel as the devil. At this moment, Ling Jie suddenly rejoiced that he was not his enemy, and also rejoiced that Heavenly Sword Villa was not his enemy. Little Jie, I have a matter that needs your help. Yunche spoke. Ling Jie nodded, say it boss, I'll definitely accomplish it with all my strength. Yunche turned around, and looked at Xiao Lai and Xiao Lingxi, help me send my grandfather and little aunt to the Blue Wind Imperial City. I had initially wanted to first go back to New Moon City together with them, but since you've come, I changed my mind. Okay. Ling Jie affirmed without hesitation, and then questioned, then, you. Little Jie, you aren't coming together with us. Xiao Lingxi caught onto the idea hidden within Yunche's words, and hastily walked over and pulled him. Yunche grasped Xiao Lingxi's hand with a backward grip. He looked at her and Xiao Lai, Little Xie is Heavenly Sword Villa's young villa master. With his protection, you can safely arrive at Blue Wind Imperial City. I'll come after a few days, but only a few days. I promise you, I'll definitely reunite with you safe and sound. You are going to stay, to deal with Burning Heaven Clan. Xiao Lingxi spoke quietly, as water mist silently veiled her eyes, but we've already escaped. Why would you still go back and face danger? Burning Heaven Clan is so formidable, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. Yunche faintly smiled. He spoke slowly but resolutely, because I want Burning Heaven Clan to know, and more so let everyone in this world know, what their end would be if they touch my grandfather and little aunt. Hate me, frame me, assassinate me, I can temporarily endure. But if they dare laying a finger on any of you, no matter who it is, I'll definitely not let them off. I will use Burning Heaven Clan's annihilation to make everyone in the world know the consequences of harming you. Safety and peace was not blind compromise, tolerance, and avoidance. It was absolute terror that makes one not dare to lay their fingers on you. During his life in the Azure Cloud continent, Yunche had already understood this point very clearly. He wanted Xiao Lingxi and Xiao Lai to be absolutely safe within Blue Wind Empire, without anyone daring to oppress and harm them. But... You, Dad, tell little Che to not do that, I'm scared that something will happen to him. Xiao Lingxi looked at Xiao Lai with a gaze seeking help. On this matter, I support Che's decision. Xiao Lai lightly sighed. Ah? Xiao Lingxi's cherry lips slightly opened, as her face filled with bewilderment. Burning Heaven Clan had already been pressed to such an extent. Even if Chea stops right here, they definitely would not let Chea off. Xiao Lai walked over, and lightly patted Yunche's shoulders, your growth, to me, is just like a dream. Now that I've seen the current you, even if I were to die right now, I would be extremely gratified. Do what you wish to your heart's content. Lingxi and I will tour the Imperial City while waiting to reunite with you. Yes? Yes? Yunche nodded, and nodded again. He moved his lips and was just about to say something, but then started to hesitate. Grandfather, there is something that I don't know if I should tell you. Ha ha, Xiao Lai smiled gently. In this life of mine, I have received countless wounds on my body, and also countless injuries to my heart. In this world, there is already nothing that I cannot endure anymore. Whatever it is, feel free and speak it. Losing one's child, losing one's grandchild, losing one's wife. Just how despairing and miserable were those years to Xiao Lai. Yun Che's heart felt a surge of bitterness. He slightly nodded and said, Grandfather, I have already found out who it was that hunted down my parents and killed Uncle Xiao back then. Xiao Lai's aura was originally as calm as tranquil water, without the slightest perturbation. As Yun Che's voice fell, his entire body fiercely shook and his eyes instantly became misty. It was only after a long while did he finally shakily turn his head around and ask with a trembling voice, What did you say? You found the murderer? Xiao Ying, the son he took pride in, who was also his only son, was murdered by someone, and his daughter-in-law had suicide in grief. After his wife gave birth to Xiao Lingxi, she passed away from too much longing and grief. Xiao Lai's life had also fell into a bottomless abyss of despair. If not for Xiao Lingxi and Yun Che needing to be raised up by him, perhaps he would have long ago followed his wife. Concentrated on that murderer who killed his son was all the hatred he had in his entire life. He searched a whole 10-odd years, and had never stopped searching. He, whose disposition was kind and gentle, who had never killed a person in his life, had even wished to dismember that person into shattered corpses with the cruelest method in this world. Really? Who? Who exactly murdered my brother? Xiao Lingxi also asked urgently. Even though she did not personally experience it back in the days, she had felt the hardship Xiao Lai had gone through all these years as thought they were her own. She, too, had always wished to find the murderer back then. Yun Che muttered to himself for a bit and said, Grandfather, I know that finding the culprit was your greatest wish for all these years. However, the force that killed Uncle Xiao back then is far more powerful than we've ever imagined. You have to prepare yourself mentally. As Ling Jie heard to hear, his heart suddenly rattled. He quickly went and dragged up Fen Jueqing and said, I'm going to feed my fierce Zephyr bird, just holler when you are ready to leave. After he finished speaking, he dragged Fen Jueqing a far distance away, and also suppressed his sense of hearing. Xiao Lai's chest heavily undulated. A little while later, his heart finally calmed down a little, and he spoke, Go ahead and tell. In these 10-odd years, I wanted to know who murdered my son even in my dreams. No matter who it is. Yun Che slightly nodded, and said with a low voice, Grandfather, have you heard about the 4 great sacred grounds before? 4 great sacred grounds? What kind of place is that? Xiao Lingxi had a blank look. Xiao Lai slightly froze, then his expression greatly changed. He indeed had heard of the 4 great sacred grounds. Moreover, he actually had learned the name of the 4 great sacred grounds from the mouth of his son Xiao Ying. He knew that those were the greatest 4 forces in the entire profound sky continent, an existence that looked down upon all of the profound sky continent like an inquisitor. Their might far surpassed the 4 major sects. They were legends of pinnacle that they could never touch in their entire lives, and even hearing their name would be rare. He spoke with a shocked voice. Don't tell me the person who murdered my son is. As for the exact person that murdered Uncle Xiao, I don't actually know who it was. I only know that he comes from the mighty Heavenly Sword region, one of the 4 great sacred grounds. Yun Che said with a solemn tone. Xiao Lai's entire body went stiff, his eyes and hands were both intensely trembling under endless agitation and shock. While Xiao Lingxi still seemed to be at a loss as she whispered, Mighty Heavenly Sword region. She who had never heard the name of 4 great sacred grounds, fundamentally didn't understand just how frightening of a concept the 4 words, Mighty Heavenly Sword region, was. A powerful being such as Heavenly Sword Villa's Villa Master, basically couldn't even be considered average at Mighty Heavenly Sword region. Once, Xiao Lai had wanted to take revenge countless times. He had swore in his heart that no matter who the culprit was, he'd personally make the culprit pay the debt of blood when he finds him. However, the name, Mighty Heavenly Sword region, pressed onto his heart like a mountain so tall that one couldn't see the peak of. It made him feel a deep despair, and the fire of vengeance was instantly suppressed to the extent of almost extinguishing. Amongst the profound sky continent's 7 nations, Blue Wind Empire's size was the smallest, strength was the weakest, and even needed to send consecration to Divine Phoenix Empire every year. And the 4 great sacred grounds were existences that surpassed the profound sky continent's 7 nations. Even the mighty divine Phoenix Empire absolutely would not dare to provoke the four great sacred grounds. Before the four great sacred grounds, all living things were as insignificant as ants. This vengeance, how could he take it? What could he use to take it? Xiao Lai's response allowed Yun Che to know what he was currently thinking. He stood in front of Xiao Lai and said each word unyieldingly, "Grandfather, even though this foe is far stronger than we had predicted, it absolutely does not mean that we cannot take revenge. Even more so, it cannot make us give up on revenge here. With my current strength, I'm far from qualified to head to mighty Heavenly Sword region and make them repay their debt, but I ask Grandfather to believe me, that there will definitely be one day when I'll slaughter my way into the mighty Heavenly Sword region and collect this debt of blood. Because this is not only Grandfather's and Uncle Xiao's debt, it is also my biological grandfather, biological parents, and my own debt. In this life of mine, as long as I am alive, I'll certainly make mighty Heavenly Sword region pay, not a single cent less." "Your biological grandfather?" Xiao Lai was struck dumb. Yun Che lightly nodded. "Last year, I found my grandfather amidst an enormous accident. He was heavily wounded by mighty Heavenly Sword region, and was sealed within an abyss of darkness for an entire 100 years. If not for being at the right place at the wrong time, I probably wouldn't have met him in my entire lifetime. From my biological grandfather, I made sense of some matters back then, and found out about my birth parents' identity, and also found out the culprit that murdered Uncle Xiao back then. Then your grandfather, how is he right now?" Yun Che closed his eyes, gently turned his face away to look into the far and empty distance. "He passed away. In order to allow me to escape, he snapped his own heart veins. Before his death, he wanted me to pass on his gratitude to you. He said that you are the person he was the most grateful and guilty toward in his entire life." Xiao Lai had on a dumbfounded expression, and he didn't speak for a long time. "On the day my biological grandfather died, I had already sworn that I'll collect this debt of blood from mighty Heavenly Sword region no matter what. When that day of me barging into mighty Heavenly Sword region and finding the culprit that killed Uncle Xiao comes, I'll take him before Grandfather alive, and let Grandfather personally dispose of him," Yun Che said resolutely. Xiao Lai's gaze trembled again. A long while after, he slowly nodded, and spoke as if he had lost himself in a dream. "Okay. Okay." Xiao Lai was usually an extremely composed person, and Yun Che had very rarely seen him lose control over his emotions. Yet Xiao Lai's mind at this moment was evidently already in chaos. He thirsted to know the murderer back then, but the truth was extremely cruel to him. From Xiao Lai, Yun Che had even felt the will of dying that suddenly emerged within him. What had supported Xiao Lai through all these years was not only Xiao Lingxi and Yun Che, but also the fixation on finding the culprit and taking vengeance. But when revenge became wild wishes, shock, powerlessness, and the feeling of having failed his son and wife, these all made the fire of his heart dismal. Yun Che resolutely swore he would definitely take revenge, but that was mighty Heavenly Sword region, the pinnacle of existence in the profound sky continent. He wouldn't think that Yun Che really had the ability to ask such a colossus for vengeance, and more so didn't wish for Yun Che to face danger for this, to the point of even losing his life. Looking at Xiao Lai's expression, Yun Che silently sighed in his heart, and said, "After me and my biological grandfather recognized each other, I found out about some things. Back then, after my birth parents had left Floating Cloud City, they weren't caught by mighty Heavenly Sword region, and had instead safely fled back to their own homeland. Grandfather, do you know what this implies? This can at least make certain that the one who followed my birth parents and left Uncle Xiao's son, your biological grandson, wasn't killed, and instead arrived at an absolutely safe place together with my birth parents in the end." Yun Che's words sounded like rolling thunder beside Xiao Lai's ears. His eyes instantly stared wide, and his originally dead grey eyes instantly exploded with incomparably intense vividness. He grabbed Yun Che's shoulders with both hands, excited to the extent where his entire body was shaking. "Is what you said true? Is what you said true?" "Undoubtedly true." Backhandedly grabbing Xiao Lai's arm, Yun Che said as he looked him straight in the eyes, "When my birth parents fled to Floating Cloud City, they were already wounded all over and burnt out. If the mighty Heavenly Sword region's people had caught up to them by then, they would have definitely met their end. But they safely returned to their homeland in the end, which proves that they had not encountered any other enemies afterwards. Then, the child in their arms would also definitely be safe. His age is similar to mine, and as for today, he is also 19 years old like me. Grandfather's bloodline, Uncle Xiao's bloodline, had never been cut off." Xiao Lai's entire person froze there, and in a moment his aged eyes were already full of tears. Yunche lowered his voice and said, I am hoping to reunite with my birth parents, and he must also be hoping to reunite with his blood-related family. So grandfather, you have to be strong, your biological grandson is still waiting to recognize and reunite with you. Xiao Lai's hands gradually loosened. His face was full of tear marks, but the color in his eyes became much more energetic, replacing all of the dead gray of before. He heavily nodded, and said in a low voice, okay. Okay. They were the same two words, yet they were no longer murky and powerless, and more so no longer had any hint of the wish to die. Yunche secretly let out a breath of relief. He called back Ling Jie, and carried Xiao Lai and Xiao Lingxi onto his mount, the fierce Zephyr bird. Little Che, you have to be careful, be sure to not overexert yourself, and be even more sure to not let anything bad happen to yourself. Xiao Lingxi tightly gripped the corner of her clothing as she exclaimed with anxiety and worry. Don't you worry. Yunche said with a relaxed smile on his face, I'm invincible right now, you know. I don't even need to put an insignificant Burning Heaven clan in my eyes. I had just reunited with you, so how can I be willing to let myself die? Tour the Imperial City with all your heart for a few days. When you guys are done playing, I ought to be back too. Haven't seen each other for 3 years, and little Che had actually also learned how to talk big. Xiao Lingxi faintly smiled. She looked at the Fen Jueching slacked onto the ground not far away, suddenly thought of something, and said, Little Che, if you really could destroy Burning Heaven clan, then, can you spare a person there? Yunche slightly froze for a bit, then said, the person little aunt is talking about is. I remembered that his name was. Right, it's Fen Jueching. Fen Jueching? Yunche's brows abruptly sunk, and he said with a surprised tone, why spare him? It was clearly he who abducted you to the Burning Heaven clan. But he was also listening to that person's orders. Xiao Lingxi extended her hand and pointed at Fen Jueching. Also, after arriving at Burning Heaven clan, to me this detestable person wanted to. It's Fen Jueching who stopped him. Or else, I might have already. Also, when you came, it was also this person who wanted to use me to threaten you, and it was similarly Fen Jueching that stopped him. He was even heavily wounded because of that. Xiao Lingxi's words made cold sweat instantly emerge all over Yunche's body. He fiercely turned his eyes and stared over at Fen Jueching as the intent to kill crazily surged all over in his heart. Only after using all of his willpower, did he finally forcefully suppress this surge of killing intent. He slowly nodded, I understand, I'll spare him. Phew, Xiao Lingxi patted her chest, and let out a breath of relief, even though he looked scary, his heart isn't bad at all. But this person called Fen Jueching is thoroughly bad. Fen Jueching, who was paralyzed on the ground, uttered a painful moan, as though he wanted to refute or beg for mercy, but in the end, he could only powerlessly slump back down. The fierce Zephyr bird slowly ascended, yet Ling Jie stood on the ground for a long time and didn't leap up. After hesitating for a while, he suddenly said toward Yunche, Boss, this time, are you really going to destroy completely Burning Heaven clan? Yes? Yunche nodded without a single bit of hesitation, like what I said before, I must let everyone know the outcome of harming my family members. There is absolutely no leeway. The corner of Ling Jie's mouth moved, as he faintly let out a sigh and spoke, there's something I might need to tell you. My grandfather had a period of friendship with Burning Heaven clan's Grand Clan Master Fen Yijue before. Even though I hadn't seen grandfather many times before in my life, I had heard my father say that my grandfather extremely values friendship and loyalty. I'm worried that if Burning Heaven clan really reached that step, grandfather may possibly act. Yunche. 10 years ago, grandfather was already at the middle stages of Emperor Profound Realm. He is currently the publicly recognized #1 of the entire Blue Wind Empire. Burning Heaven clan's Grand Clan Master Fen Yijue's power is incredibly strong, but even if there are 3 of him, it would be impossible for him to beat my grandfather. If my grandfather really acts, I'm afraid. As he spoke till here, Ling Jie shook his head once with force, and said with a smiling grin, it's just only a tiny possibility. Maybe I'm thinking too much. Besides, grandfather had said long ago that he doesn't bother with worldly matters anymore. Anyways, boss, you have to be careful. Amen, I got it. Thank you for telling me these. Yunche said as he nodded. With a faint howl of the wind, Ling Jie leapt onto the fierce Zephyr bird. The fierce Zephyr bird extended its wings, and left as it broke through the air. Looking at that touch of cyan-colored silhouette that went further and further away, Yunche's brows sunk as he sank into deep thought. Yunche had occasionally heard Ken Yu mention Ling Jie's grandfather before. Sword Saint Ling Jianni. Number 1 in the current Blue Wind. Episode 47 is end here. Next episode coming tomorrow. Thanks for watching.